neighborhood playing football in the backyard had Vikings jerseys, but they were all number 10 Fran Tarkenton, number 44 Chuck Foreman. My parents had to get me a purple shirt and iron on 2 88s. I had the only Alan Page jersey in the neighborhood. It was moth-eaten. My mother was mortified to send me out of the house with it. And when I was in second grade, my friend Troy, his father managed the Holiday Inn in Bloomington, and everybody knew that Saturday night before home games, the Vikings stayed there. I got to the Holiday Inn, and Troy's dad told me, Alan Page doesn't sign autographs, and it just crushed me. I couldn't believe it. And then so the doors opened, and all of a sudden Alan Page blew past me, turned as if he'd forgotten to pick up his room key or something, came back, saw this kid in his 88 jersey, trembling, and he put his hand on my head as if he were palming a grapefruit or something, tousled my hair, I had some then, picked up my spiral notebook and my Bic banana, signed his beautiful autograph, handed the thing back to me, and then went back and disappeared up the stairwell, and I just stood there shaking in this pool of admiration and probably urine as well. 25 years after that, when I told Page this story of my seeking the autograph from him and my having that only threadbare Alan Page jersey, a few months later, in the mail, I get a 3/4 sleeve white 88 jersey that he had signed to me and said, "This is to replace that jersey that you lost when you were 8. I can count on one hand the number of interview subjects that I've gotten a handwritten note from afterwards.
Alan Page was born and raised in Canton, Ohio. As a teenager, he worked in construction and helped build the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In 1988, he was enshrined there, but nothing else about Alan Page followed a direct path.
He revolutionized the defensive tackle position. When he came in, he said the coaches wanted him to kind of man this 1 square yard of space, his lane. He never found that particularly interesting. And so you'd see him going through all different kinds of gaps. You'd see him swimming around 2 defenders at the same time. You'd see him pulling different colored jerseys down, and maybe one of those guys had the ball, and he'll sort it out afterwards. He looked just huge in uniform with those pads on. But out of uniform, he's a fairly skinny guy. He's run 1,000 marathons. You would not think that he was one of the greatest players in the history of the National Football League.
Page is the only defensive lineman ever to be named league MVP. Relentless and at times even volatile on the field. Mild-mannered and cerebral off of it. He was a ferocious competitor, but cared little about his one career failing, never winning a Super Bowl.
It's just, it's another football game. I suppose if it were more than that, if it were the end of the world, the spectacular that it's made out to be, then I'd be somewhat more concerned about, winning or losing. Come Monday morning, I'm going to be on my way back to Minnesota to law school. And Tuesday morning when I'm in class, I'm just going to be like everybody else sitting there in class. It's not going to be that big a deal.
He was studying law in the locker room as an NFL player. Had this notion of becoming a lawyer since he was a kid, and football stardom, unusual for a lot of athletes, didn't interest him. He thought it was kind of silly that people thought he was better than other people because he could play football, and that's one of the reasons he didn't sign autographs for a long time, was because he didn't feel like, I'm somebody that you should think is special just because I play football.
The man who once ruled the middle of the greatest defense in Vikings history would go on to become a judge on the Minnesota Supreme Court.
He doesn't have a single football memento in his office. He has a lot of mementos about Jim Crow and things that remind him of the power lawmakers and judges and courts and the legal system can have in people's lives and in changing society. And I think that's what he's most proud of, and that's the source of his greatest accomplishment.